My name is Elijah Reed, and for a long time I called Chicago my home, a city of wind and dreams, where I'd carved out a decent life for myself. At 38, I wasn't exactly where I thought I'd be, but I had a good job, a cozy apartment overlooking Lake Michigan, and a handful of friends I considered family. I worked as a mid-level marketing manager for a large firm downtown, Global Tech Solutions. We handled advertising campaigns for smaller tech companies, helping them get their products off the ground. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid the bills and allowed me to indulge in my passions, photography and exploring the city's hidden gems. I was a pretty straightforward guy, maybe a little too honest for my own good, but I valued integrity above all else. That's probably what got me into trouble. Global Tech had a cutthroat culture. You had to play the game, schmooze with the right people, and never, ever rock the boat. I was never good at that. I focused on doing my job well, delivering results, and treating my colleagues with respect. I thought that was enough. I was wrong. It all started with Project Phoenix, a massive campaign for a new virtual reality headset. The client was demanding, the timeline was tight, and the pressure was on. Our team, led by the ambitious and frankly incompetent Melissa Hayes, was burning the midnight oil. Melissa was a master of corporate maneuvering. She knew how to charm the higher-ups, take credit for other people's work, and deflect blame like a seasoned politician. I quickly realized that Melissa was cutting corners. She was pushing for flashy visuals and celebrity endorsements, ignoring the core message of the product and its target audience. I tried to raise my concerns during team meetings, suggesting alternative strategies and highlighting the potential risks. But Melissa brushed me off every time. "Elijah, you're overthinking it," she'd say with a condescending smile. "Just trust me, I know what I'm doing." The campaign launched with a bang, generating massive buzz on social media. But behind the scenes, the product was riddled with bugs and technical glitches. Customers were furious, reviews were scathing, and sales plummeted. The client was livid. Instead of taking responsibility, Melissa pointed fingers. She blamed the development team, the tech support staff, and of course me. She claimed I had sabotaged the campaign by spreading negativity and undermining her leadership. It was a blatant lie, but Melissa had the ear of the CEO, a man named Mr. Thompson who valued loyalty over competence. He was easily swayed by her charm and oblivious to her manipulative tactics. One Friday afternoon, I was called into Mr. Thompson's office. Melissa was already there, wearing a smug expression. "Elijah," Mr. Thompson began, his voice grave, "we've received some troubling reports about your performance on Project Phoenix. Melissa has brought some serious concerns to our attention." I tried to defend myself, to explain my perspective, but Mr. Thompson cut me off. "I'm afraid we have no choice but to let you go. Your services are no longer required at Global Tech." I was stunned. After years of dedicated service, I was being fired for doing my job too well, for speaking the truth. I felt a surge of anger, but I knew it was futile to argue. I packed my belongings, said goodbye to my few allies, and walked out of the building, my career in shambles. As I stood on the sidewalk, staring up at the towering skyscraper that had once housed my dreams, I felt a burning desire for justice. I didn't want revenge, not exactly. I just wanted the truth to come out. I wanted Melissa to be held accountable for her actions. I walked away from Global Tech that day, but a part of me knew that I would be back someday. I just didn't know how or when. The weeks that followed were a blur of unemployment applications, awkward interviews, and soul-searching. I spent hours poring over job boards, sending out resumes, and networking with former colleagues. But the job market was tough, and my reputation had been tarnished by Melissa's lies. I started to doubt myself, wondering if I had made the right choices, if I had been too idealistic, too naive. One evening, while drowning my sorrows in a pint of craft beer at my local pub, I ran into an old friend from college, David. David was a tech entrepreneur, a brilliant coder who had struck gold with a successful startup. We hadn't seen each other in years, but we quickly reconnected. As I recounted my ordeal at Global Tech, David listened intently, his eyes narrowing with each detail. "That's outrageous, Elijah," he said, shaking his head. "Melissa Hayes always was a snake. I heard rumors about her pulling similar stunts at her previous company." David offered me a lifeline. He needed a marketing consultant to help him launch his latest venture, a cutting-edge cybersecurity platform. He knew my skills and experience, and he trusted my judgment. I hesitated at first. I wasn't sure if I was ready to jump back into the corporate world, but David's offer was too good to pass up. It was a chance to prove myself, to rebuild my career, and to maybe, just maybe, get some payback on Melissa Hayes. I accepted the job, throwing myself into the challenge with renewed vigor. I worked tirelessly, developing a comprehensive marketing strategy, crafting compelling messaging, and building a strong brand identity. David's platform was innovative and effective, and my marketing efforts paid off handsomely. Within months, the company was booming, attracting attention from investors and industry experts alike. I had found my calling, my niche. I was good at what I did, and I was finally being recognized for my talents. I was starting to feel like myself again, confident, capable, and ready to take on the world. But the thought of Melissa Hayes still lingered in the back of my mind. I hadn't forgotten what she had done to me, and I hadn't given up on my quest for justice. One day, David called me into his office, a mischievous glint in his eyes. "Elijah," he said, "I have some interesting news. Remember Global Tech Solutions? They're in trouble." My ears perked up. "What kind of trouble?" "They're hemorrhaging money, their reputation is in the toilet, and Mr. Thompson is desperate for a solution. He's hired a consulting firm to come in and turn things around." And I prompted, sensing there was more to the story. David grinned. "Guess who that consulting firm is? It's us." My jaw dropped. "You're kidding me." "Nope. We landed the biggest contract of our lives, and we're going to be working directly with Global Tech's top executives, including Melissa Hayes." I couldn't believe it. The universe had handed me the perfect opportunity to exact my revenge, not in a malicious way, but in a way that would expose Melissa's incompetence and restore my reputation. I was going back to Global Tech, not as an employee but as their savior. The irony was delicious. I walked out of David's office, my heart pounding with anticipation. I knew that this was going to be the most challenging and the most satisfying project of my career. But as I prepared for my return to Global Tech, I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to this story than met the eye. Why had Global Tech chosen our relatively small consulting firm over the dozens of larger, more established companies? Was it just luck, or was there something else at play? The first day back at Global Tech was surreal. Walking through the lobby, I felt like I was in a time warp. The same faces, the same decor, the same oppressive atmosphere. Except this time, I wasn't an employee. I was a consultant, part of the team that was supposed to rescue the company from its impending doom. I spotted Melissa Hayes across the room, her eyes widening as she recognized me. She quickly recovered her composure, flashing a fake smile. "Elijah," she said, her voice dripping with false enthusiasm. "What a surprise to see you here. I had no idea you were working with this consulting firm." "Nice to see you too, Melissa," I replied, keeping my tone neutral. "It's been a while." The initial meetings were tense. Mr. Thompson, looking older and more haggard than I remembered, tried to put on a brave face, but I could see the desperation in his eyes. Melissa, on the other hand, was her usual arrogant self, interrupting, talking over people, and trying to control the narrative. It was clear that she was still calling the shots, despite the company's dire situation. As I delved deeper into Global Tech's problems, I discovered a web of mismanagement, overspending, and unethical practices. Melissa had been running the company like her personal fiefdom, awarding lucrative contracts to her friends, inflating her own performance metrics, and silencing anyone who dared to question her authority. I documented everything, meticulously gathering evidence to support my findings. I knew that I couldn't rely on hearsay or speculation. I needed hard facts to expose Melissa's wrongdoing. One evening, while working late in the office, I stumbled upon a hidden folder on the company's shared drive. It contained a series of confidential emails and documents that revealed a shocking secret. Melissa had been embezzling funds from Global Tech for years, diverting money into offshore accounts and using it to finance her lavish lifestyle. I was stunned. I had suspected her of incompetence and manipulation, but I never imagined she was capable of outright theft. This was a game changer. This was the evidence I needed to bring her down, not just for what she had done to me, but for what she had done to the company and its employees. I copied the files onto a secure hard drive, knowing that I had to be careful. Melissa was ruthless, and she wouldn't hesitate to silence me if she found out what I knew. The next morning, I presented my findings to David and the rest of our consulting team. They were shocked and outraged by Melissa's actions. We agreed that we had to report her to the authorities, but we also knew that we had to proceed with caution. Melissa had powerful connections, and she could potentially bury the evidence or even retaliate against us. We decided to approach Mr. Thompson first, giving him a chance to do the right thing. We presented him with the evidence, explaining the extent of Melissa's crimes. He was initially in denial, refusing to believe that his trusted protégé could be capable of such treachery. But as he reviewed the documents and listened to our explanation, his face grew pale with shock and disbelief. He finally realized that he had been blinded by Melissa's charm and that he had allowed her to run the company into the ground. Mr. Thompson thanked us for bringing the truth to light and promised to cooperate fully with the authorities. He immediately suspended Melissa and launched an internal investigation. The news of Melissa's alleged embezzlement sent shockwaves through Global Tech. The employees were stunned and angry, feeling betrayed by someone they had once admired. I watched as Melissa's carefully constructed facade crumbled around her. Her friends turned their backs on her, her allies abandoned her, and her reputation was ruined. But even as I witnessed her downfall, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was missing. I had exposed her crimes, I had helped to bring her to justice, but I still felt a sense of unease. I realized that my quest for revenge had blinded me to the bigger picture. I had been so focused on Melissa's wrongdoing that I had failed to see the other problems plaguing Global Tech. The company was rotten from the top down, riddled with corruption, and plagued by a toxic work environment. Melissa was just a symptom of a much larger disease. As the investigation into Melissa's embezzlement deepened, more secrets began to surface. It turned out that Mr. Thompson himself was involved in some shady dealings, accepting kickbacks from vendors and covering up financial irregularities. He claimed that he had been unaware of Melissa's crimes, but the evidence suggested otherwise. The authorities expanded their investigation, targeting not only Melissa but also Mr. Thompson and several other top executives. Global Tech was crumbling, its future uncertain. The employees were demoralized, the clients were fleeing, and the company was on the brink of collapse. I knew that I couldn't just stand by and watch it all fall apart. I had a responsibility to do something, to help salvage what was left of Global Tech and to create a better future for its employees. But as I contemplated my next move, I received a mysterious phone call that changed everything. It was from an anonymous source who claimed to have information about Melissa Hayes and her connection to a powerful organized crime syndicate. The source warned me that Melissa was not someone to be trifled with, and that I was putting myself in grave danger by pursuing her. The anonymous phone call rattled me. I had been so focused on exposing Melissa's corporate crimes that I had overlooked the possibility that she might be involved in something far more sinister. The thought of her being connected to organized crime sent a chill down my spine. I knew that I had to be careful. I couldn't trust anyone, not even my closest allies. I decided to confide in David, telling him about the phone call and my concerns about Melissa's potential ties to the underworld. David was skeptical at first, but he agreed that we couldn't afford to ignore the threat. He suggested that we hire a private investigator to look into Melissa's background and see if we could uncover any evidence of criminal activity. We contacted a reputable detective agency, providing them with all the information we had gathered about Melissa. The investigators got to work, delving into her past, tracing her financial transactions, and interviewing her former associates. Within days, they had uncovered a network of shell corporations, offshore accounts, and suspicious transactions that pointed to a clear link between Melissa and a notorious crime boss known as the Serpent. The Serpent was a ruthless and cunning criminal who controlled a vast empire of illegal gambling, drug trafficking, and money laundering. He was known for his ruthlessness and his ability to evade law enforcement. The investigators discovered that Melissa had been using her position at Global Tech to launder money for the Serpent, funneling millions of dollars through the company's accounts and disguising it as legitimate business transactions. In exchange, the Serpent had been protecting Melissa, using his influence to silence her critics and to shield her from prosecution. I was horrified by what I had learned. Melissa was not just a corporate crook. She was a criminal mastermind, deeply entangled in a web of corruption and violence. I knew that I had stumbled upon something far bigger and more dangerous than I had ever imagined. I realized that I was not just fighting for justice for myself and the employees of Global Tech. I was fighting against a powerful and ruthless criminal organization that threatened the very fabric of society. I knew that I couldn't back down now. I had come too far, and I had too much at stake. I had to expose Melissa and the Serpent, no matter the cost. I contacted the FBI, providing them with all the evidence we had gathered about Melissa and her connection to the Serpent. The agents were initially skeptical, but as they reviewed the documents and listened to my explanation, they realized the gravity of the situation. They launched a full-scale investigation, working in coordination with our private investigators to gather more evidence and to build a case against Melissa and the Serpent. The investigation proceeded swiftly and secretly. The FBI agents wiretapped Melissa's phone, monitored her emails, and tracked her movements. They also interviewed her associates, gathering incriminating evidence that linked her to the Serpent's criminal enterprise. As the net closed in on Melissa, she grew increasingly paranoid and desperate. She suspected that she was being watched, and she tried to cover her tracks, destroying evidence and fleeing to a secret hideout. But the FBI agents were one step ahead of her. They tracked her down to a secluded cabin in the mountains, where she was hiding with the Serpent and several of his henchmen. A dramatic raid ensued, with the FBI agents storming the cabin and arresting Melissa, the Serpent, and their accomplices. The authorities seized millions of dollars in cash, drugs, and weapons, effectively dismantling the Serpent's criminal empire. Melissa and the Serpent were charged with a long list of crimes, including embezzlement, money laundering, racketeering, and conspiracy. They faced the prospect of spending the rest of their lives in prison. With Melissa and the Serpent behind bars, the truth about Global Tech's corruption was finally exposed. The company's stock price plummeted, its reputation was in tatters, and its future was uncertain. Mr. Thompson was forced to resign, and several other top executives were fired or arrested. Global Tech was on the brink of collapse, but amidst the chaos and despair, there was a glimmer of hope. The employees of Global Tech, who had been demoralized and betrayed by their leaders, rallied together to save the company. They formed a new leadership team, implemented ethical business practices, and worked tirelessly to rebuild the company's reputation. I played a key role in the turnaround, using my marketing expertise to develop a new brand identity and to attract new clients. I also helped to create a more positive and supportive work environment, where employees felt valued and respected. Slowly but surely, Global Tech began to recover. The company's stock price rebounded, its client base grew, and its reputation was restored. The employees of Global Tech had proven that it was possible to overcome adversity and to create a better future, even in the face of seemingly insurmountable odds. As for me, I emerged from the ordeal stronger and wiser. I had faced my nemesis, I had exposed her crimes, and I had helped to bring her to justice. But more importantly, I had learned a valuable lesson about the importance of integrity, courage, and resilience. I realized that revenge was not the answer. The true satisfaction came from doing the right thing, from standing up for what I believed in, and from helping others to achieve their full potential. I continued to work as a consultant for Global Tech, but I also started my own business, providing marketing services to small and medium-sized companies. I wanted to use my skills and experience to help other entrepreneurs succeed, to create jobs, and to contribute to the economic growth of my community. One day, I received a letter from Melissa Hayes. She was writing from prison, expressing her remorse for her crimes and asking for my forgiveness. She admitted that she had been driven by greed and ambition, and that she had hurt a lot of people along the way. She said that she had learned her lesson and that she was committed to turning her life around. I was surprised by her letter. I had expected her to be bitter and resentful, but she seemed genuinely contrite. I thought about her words for a long time, weighing the pros and cons of forgiveness. In the end, I decided to write her back. I told her that I forgave her not for her sake, but for my own. I realized that holding onto anger and resentment would only poison my own soul. By forgiving her, I was freeing myself from the burden of the past and allowing myself to move on with my life. I never heard from Melissa again, but I hoped that she was able to find peace and redemption. As for me, I continued to live my life to the fullest, embracing new challenges and opportunities. I had learned that even the darkest of times could lead to unexpected blessings, and that even the most bitter of enemies could be forgiven. And as I looked back on my journey, I realized that I had not only survived my ordeal, but I had also emerged as a better person. Years passed, and I continued to build my career and my business. I had become a respected figure in the marketing industry, known for my integrity, my creativity, and my commitment to excellence. I had also found love, marrying a wonderful woman named Sarah, who supported me and inspired me to be the best version of myself. We had two beautiful children, a son and a daughter, who filled our lives with joy and laughter. I had finally found the happiness and fulfillment that I had always sought. But even as I celebrated my successes, I never forgot the lessons I had learned from my experience at Global Tech. I remained vigilant against corruption and injustice, using my influence to advocate for ethical business practices and to support causes that I believed in. One day, I received an invitation to attend a gala event hosted by the Chicago Chamber of Commerce. The event was honoring local business leaders who had made significant contributions to the community. I was surprised and honored to be invited. I had always considered myself an outsider, someone who had had to fight for every inch of progress. I wasn't sure if I belonged in such a prestigious gathering, but Sarah encouraged me to go, saying that it was a chance to network with other successful entrepreneurs and to celebrate my achievements. I reluctantly agreed, donning my best suit and heading to the gala with Sarah by my side. As we entered the grand ballroom, I was immediately struck by the opulence and glamour of the event. The room was filled with elegantly dressed people, sipping champagne and exchanging pleasantries. I felt a bit out of place, but Sarah's presence calmed my nerves. We mingled with the crowd, striking up conversations with various business leaders and community activists. I was impressed by the passion and dedication of these individuals, who were all committed to making Chicago a better place. As the evening progressed, the master of ceremonies took to the stage to announce the honorees of the night. I listened intently as he described the achievements of each recipient, feeling a sense of admiration and respect. Finally, he reached my name. "And now," he said, "we are pleased to present the Business Leadership Award to Mr. Elijah Reed, founder and CEO of Reed Marketing Solutions." Elijah is a visionary entrepreneur who has not only built a successful business, but has also made a significant impact on the Chicago community. He is a strong advocate for ethical business practices, a dedicated supporter of local charities, and a role model for aspiring entrepreneurs. I was stunned. I couldn't believe that I was being recognized for my achievements. I had never sought recognition or praise, but it felt good to be acknowledged for my hard work and dedication. I walked onto the stage, feeling a mix of excitement and humility. I accepted the award from the Master of Ceremonies, thanking him for the honor. I then gave a short speech, sharing my story of overcoming adversity and achieving success. I spoke about the importance of integrity, courage, and resilience, and I encouraged everyone to use their talents and resources to make a positive impact on the world. As I concluded my speech, the audience erupted in applause. I felt a surge of gratitude and pride, knowing that I had finally achieved my goals and that I had made a difference in the lives of others. After the ceremony, I was approached by several people who wanted to congratulate me and to learn more about my business. I enjoyed talking to them, sharing my insights and experiences. As I was chatting with a group of entrepreneurs, I noticed a familiar face in the crowd. It was Mr. Thompson, my former boss at Global Tech. He looked older and more frail than I remembered, but I recognized him immediately. He approached me hesitantly, his eyes filled with remorse. "Elijah," he said, his voice barely audible, "I wanted to congratulate you on your award. You deserve it." I was taken aback by his words. I had expected him to be bitter and resentful, but he seemed genuinely sincere. I nodded politely, unsure of what to say. "I know I made a mistake in firing you," he continued. "I was blinded by Melissa's lies and I allowed her to run the company into the ground. I'm sorry for what I did to you." I looked at him, studying his face. I could see the pain and regret in his eyes. I realized that he had suffered greatly for his mistakes and that he had learned a valuable lesson. I decided to forgive him. "It's okay, Mr. Thompson," I said. "I've moved on, I'm doing well, and Global Tech is in good hands now." He smiled weakly, a tear rolling down his cheek. "Thank you, Elijah," he said. "That means a lot to me." We shook hands and he walked away, disappearing into the crowd. I watched him go, feeling a sense of closure. I had finally put the past behind me and I was ready to embrace the future. As I stood there, surrounded by my loved ones and my colleagues, I realized that I had achieved everything I had ever wanted. I had a successful career, a loving family, and a fulfilling life. And I had done it all with integrity, courage, and resilience. I had proven that it was possible to overcome adversity and to achieve your dreams, no matter how difficult the challenges may be. And as I looked ahead, I knew that I was ready for whatever the future might hold. Because I had learned that the true measure of success is not how much money you make or how much power you wield, but how much good you do and how much love you share. And that was a lesson that I would carry with me for the rest of my life. As the night drew to a close, Sarah and I made our way home, the Chicago skyline twinkling outside our car window. I replayed the events of the evening in my mind, the award, Mr. Thompson's apology, the feeling of accomplishment. It was a far cry from those dark days after being fired, a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and the power of perseverance. Life, I realized, had a funny way of working things out. Just when you think you're down and out, a new door opens, a new opportunity arises. It's up to you to seize it, to make the most of it, and to never give up on yourself. In the weeks that followed, I continued to focus on my business and my family. I mentored young entrepreneurs, volunteered at local charities, and spent as much time as possible with Sarah and the kids. I wanted to pay it forward, to give back to the community that had supported me through thick and thin. One afternoon, while working in my office, I received an unexpected visitor. It was a young woman named Emily, who introduced herself as a journalist from a local newspaper. She said that she was writing a story about my career and my experience at Global Tech. I was hesitant at first. I had always been private about my past, preferring to focus on the present and the future. But Emily was persistent, explaining that she wanted to tell a story of redemption and resilience, a story that could inspire others to overcome adversity and to achieve their dreams. I agreed to an interview, sharing my story with her in detail, from my early days at Global Tech to my eventual triumph over Melissa Hayes and the company's corrupt leadership. Emily listened intently, taking notes and asking insightful questions. She seemed genuinely interested in my story, and I felt comfortable opening up to her. After the interview, Emily thanked me for my time and promised to send me a draft of the article before it was published. I waited anxiously for the article to appear, wondering how my story would be received by the public. Finally, the day arrived. I picked up a copy of the newspaper and turned to the page where Emily's article was featured. The headline read, "From Fired to Flourishing, One Man's Journey of Redemption." The article was well written and insightful, capturing the essence of my story in a compelling and engaging way. Emily had accurately portrayed my struggles and my triumphs, highlighting the importance of integrity, courage, and resilience. The article generated a lot of buzz, both online and offline. I received countless messages of support and congratulations from friends, colleagues, and even complete strangers. People were inspired by my story, saying that it gave them hope and motivation to pursue their own dreams. I was overwhelmed by the positive response. I had never imagined that my story could have such a profound impact on others. But the most rewarding part of the experience was knowing that I had helped to inspire others to overcome adversity and to achieve their full potential. And that, I realized, was the ultimate revenge. Not revenge on Melissa Hayes, not revenge on Global Tech, but revenge on the circumstances that had once held me back, revenge on the doubt and fear that had threatened to consume me. I had proven that it was possible to rise above the challenges, to overcome the obstacles, and to create a life of purpose and fulfillment. And as I looked ahead to the future, I knew that I was ready for anything. Because I had learned that the true measure of success is not how much you accumulate, but how much you give, how much you inspire, and how much you love. And that was a lesson that I would carry with me always. So that's my story. The story of Elijah Reed, the marketing manager who was fired for doing the right thing, the entrepreneur who overcame adversity, and the man who found redemption and fulfillment. It's a story of revenge, yes, but it's also a story of hope, resilience, and the enduring power of the human spirit. And I hope that it inspires you to never give up on your dreams, no matter how difficult the challenges may seem. Because you never know what the future holds, and you never know what you're capable of achieving. All you have to do is believe in yourself, stay true to your values, and never stop fighting for what you believe in. And who knows, maybe one day you'll have your own story of revenge to tell. But remember, the best revenge is not about hurting others, it's about becoming the best version of yourself. It's about creating a life of purpose, fulfillment, and love. And it's about inspiring others to do the same. So go out there and make your mark on the world. Show them what you're made of. And never ever give up. And that was a lesson that I would carry with me always. The newspaper clippings yellowed over time. The awards gathered dust on the shelf. But the feeling of vindication, the quiet satisfaction of knowing I had overcome, remained a constant hum beneath the surface of my life. Sarah and I built a comfortable life, filled with laughter, love, and the occasional chaotic family dinner. My kids grew into remarkable young adults, each carving their own path in the world, and I swelled with pride at their accomplishments. Reed Marketing Solutions thrived, becoming a beacon of ethical business practices in a world often shrouded in shadows. We championed small businesses, gave back to the community, and created a workplace where employees felt valued and respected. It wasn't always easy. There were setbacks, challenges, and moments of doubt. But I always remembered the lessons I had learned from my experience at Global Tech, the importance of integrity, courage, and resilience. And those lessons carried me through. Then, one crisp autumn morning, a letter arrived, bearing a return address from a correctional facility in upstate New York. My heart skipped a beat as I recognized the name scrawled across the envelope, Melissa Hayes. A wave of memories washed over me, the sting of betrayal, the anger, the frustration, the long road to recovery. I hesitated for a moment, unsure if I wanted to reopen that chapter of my life. But curiosity got the better of me. I carefully slit the envelope open and unfolded the letter. The handwriting was shaky and uneven, a stark contrast to the confident, assertive script I remembered. The words were simple, direct, and filled with a sense of profound sadness. Melissa wrote about her life in prison, the loneliness, the regret, the slow, agonizing process of coming to terms with her past. She acknowledged the pain she had caused, the lives she had ruined, and the opportunities she had squandered. She didn't ask for forgiveness, she didn't offer excuses. She simply expressed her remorse and her desire to make amends if ever given the chance. As I read her words, I felt a strange mix of emotions. Pity, sadness, and a flicker of something akin to understanding. I knew that Melissa had made terrible choices, that she had caused immense harm. But I also knew that she was a human being, capable of change, capable of redemption. I set the letter down on my desk and stared out the window, lost in thought. I wondered what had become of the ambitious, ruthless woman I had once known. Had prison changed her? Had she truly found remorse? Or was this just another manipulation, another attempt to gain sympathy and leniency? I didn't know the answer. and perhaps I never would. But I realized that it didn't matter. What mattered was that I had moved on, that I had built a good life, and that I had found peace with my past. I decided to write Melissa back. I didn't offer forgiveness, I didn't offer friendship. I simply acknowledged her letter and wished her well. I told her that I hoped she would find a way to make amends for her actions, to use her experience to help others, and to create a better future for herself. I sealed the letter, mailed it, and tried to put Melissa Hayes out of my mind once and for all. But something lingered, a sense of unfinished business, a feeling that there was more to the story than I knew. It was a nagging unease that I couldn't shake, a feeling that would soon lead me down a path I never expected. The phone rang late one evening, shattering the quiet of our home. It was a number I didn't recognize. I hesitated before answering, a sense of foreboding washing over me. "Hello," I said cautiously. A voice, raspy and unfamiliar, spoke on the other end. "Elijah Reed." "Yes, who is this?" "I have information about Melissa Hayes," the voice said. "Information you need to hear." My heart pounded in my chest. "Who are you? What do you know?" The voice chuckled, a dry, humorless sound. "That's not important. What is important is that Melissa Hayes is not who you think she is. She's more dangerous than you ever imagined." "What are you talking about?" I demanded. "She's involved in something big, something that could put you and your family in danger. You need to be careful, Elijah, very careful." The line went dead. I stood there, phone clutched in my hand, my mind racing. What did this mean? What was Melissa involved in? And why was someone warning me? I tried to call the number back, but it was disconnected. I felt a surge of fear for my family's safety. I knew that I had to find out what was going on, to protect them from whatever threat might be lurking. But where do I begin? The raspy voice on the phone had stirred up a hornet's nest of worry and curiosity. My first instinct was to dismiss it as a prank, a cruel joke perpetrated by someone with a twisted sense of humor. But the voice had sounded so serious, so urgent. And the mention of Melissa Hayes, the implication that she was involved in something dangerous, resonated with a deep-seated unease within me. I couldn't shake the feeling that there was truth to the warning, that I was walking into a storm. I confided in Sarah, sharing the details of the phone call and my growing concerns about Melissa. Sarah, ever the voice of reason, urged me to contact the authorities, to report the incident and let them investigate. But I hesitated. I didn't want to involve the police unless I had concrete evidence of a threat, and I didn't want to risk stirring up trouble for my family without knowing exactly what I was dealing with. Instead, I decided to do some digging of my own. I started by researching Melissa Hayes, searching for any news articles or online reports that might shed light on her activities in prison. I found nothing. It was as if she had vanished from the face of the earth. Next, I contacted David, my old friend and business partner, the tech whiz who had helped me expose Melissa's crimes at Global Tech. I knew that David had connections, that he might be able to access information that I couldn't. I told David about the phone call and my concerns about Melissa. He listened intently, his brow furrowed with concentration. "That's strange, Elijah," he said. "I haven't heard anything about Melissa Hayes in years, but I'll see what I can find out." David put his tech skills to work, hacking into databases, scouring the dark web, and contacting his network of informants. Within a few days, he had uncovered some disturbing information. It turned out that Melissa Hayes had been released from prison several months earlier, quietly and without fanfare. Her release had been shrouded in secrecy, with no public announcement or media coverage. David had also discovered that Melissa had been in contact with a number of known criminals, individuals with ties to organized crime. It was clear that she was back in business, that she was involved in something illegal and dangerous. The information confirmed my worst fears. Melissa was not reformed, she was not remorseful. She was still a threat, and she was closer than I thought. I knew that I had to take action to protect my family and to stop Melissa before she could cause any more harm. But I was just one man. What could I do against a woman with connections to organized crime? I needed help, I needed allies, and I knew exactly where to turn. I reached out to a former colleague from my Global Tech days, a woman named Maria Rodriguez. Maria had been one of the few people I could trust at Global Tech, a smart, resourceful, and fiercely loyal friend. She had also been a victim of Melissa's machinations, suffering under her leadership and witnessing her corruption firsthand. I hadn't spoken to Maria in years, but I knew that she would be willing to help me. I tracked her down through LinkedIn and sent her a message, explaining my situation and asking for her assistance. To my relief, Maria responded almost immediately. She was shocked to hear about Melissa's release from prison and her renewed criminal activities. She agreed to meet with me, to discuss how we could work together to stop her. We met at a coffee shop near Maria's office, a cozy, unassuming place where we could talk without being overheard. As soon as I saw Maria, I was struck by how little she had changed. She was still the same sharp, determined woman I remembered, with a fire in her eyes and a passion for justice in her heart. I told Maria everything, sharing the details of the phone call, David's findings, and my fears for my family's safety. Maria listened intently, her expression growing increasingly grim. "This is bad, Elijah," she said. "Melissa is playing with fire. She's going to get herself and a lot of other people hurt." Maria agreed to help me, offering her expertise, her connections, and her unwavering support. She had a network of informants within the criminal underworld, individuals who could provide us with valuable information about Melissa's activities. She also had a knack for investigation, a talent for uncovering secrets and connecting the dots. Together, we formed a plan, a strategy for tracking Melissa, uncovering her scheme, and bringing her to justice. It was a risky plan, a dangerous plan, but it was the only way to protect my family and to stop Melissa from causing any more harm. As we left the coffee shop, I felt a surge of determination and resolve. I was no longer alone. I had an ally, a partner, a friend. And together we were going to take down Melissa Hayes once and for all. But little did I know Melissa was already one step ahead of us, watching our every move, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. The game had begun, and the stakes were higher than ever. Now begins a dangerous dance, a deadly game of cat and mouse with Melissa at the lead. Maria's connections proved invaluable. Within days, she had gathered a wealth of information about Melissa's recent activities. It turned out that Melissa had wasted no time in rebuilding her criminal empire. She had reconnected with her old associates, recruited new recruits, and launched a new scheme that was even more audacious and dangerous than her previous embezzlement scam. Melissa was now involved in a sophisticated money laundering operation, funneling millions of dollars through a network of shell corporations and offshore accounts. She was working for a powerful international crime syndicate, laundering their ill-gotten gains and earning a hefty commission in the process. The syndicate was known for its ruthlessness and its willingness to use violence to protect its interests. Melissa was playing with fire, and she was putting herself and everyone around her in grave danger. Maria and I worked tirelessly, piecing together the puzzle, tracking Melissa's movements, and identifying her associates. We used a combination of traditional investigation techniques and cutting-edge technology, relying on Maria's informants, David's hacking skills, and my own marketing expertise. We soon discovered that Melissa was planning a major money laundering transaction, a deal that would net her and the syndicate millions of dollars. The transaction was scheduled to take place in Chicago at a secret location that we were desperately trying to uncover. We knew that if we could intercept the transaction, we could expose Melissa's scheme, cripple the syndicate, and bring her to justice. But we were running out of time. The transaction was scheduled to take place in just a few days, and we were still missing key pieces of the puzzle. We needed to find the location of the transaction, identify Melissa's accomplices, and develop a plan to intercept the money without putting ourselves or our families at risk. The pressure was mounting, and I could feel the weight of responsibility bearing down on me. I knew that the lives of innocent people were at stake, and that it was up to me to stop Melissa before she could cause any more harm. One evening, while reviewing our findings, Maria stumbled upon a clue that could lead us to the location of the transaction. She had discovered a series of encrypted messages on Melissa's phone, messages that seemed to refer to a specific address in downtown Chicago. Maria used her coding skills to decrypt the messages, revealing a series of coordinates that corresponded to an abandoned warehouse on the city's waterfront. The warehouse was known for its seedy reputation, a haven for drug dealers, prostitutes, and other criminals. It was the perfect location for a secret money laundering transaction. We knew that we had to act fast. We contacted the authorities, sharing our findings with the FBI and urging them to raid the warehouse. But the FBI was hesitant to act without more evidence. They were concerned about the risk of a botched raid, which could jeopardize their investigation and put innocent lives at risk. I understood their concerns, but I couldn't wait any longer. I knew that Melissa was planning to move the money soon, and that if we didn't act quickly, we would lose our chance to stop her. I decided to take matters into my own hands. I enlisted the help of David, Maria, and a few trusted friends, and we formed a plan to infiltrate the warehouse, gather evidence of Melissa's crimes, and apprehend her and her accomplices. It was a risky plan, a dangerous plan. But it was the only way to ensure that justice was served. We gathered our equipment, including surveillance cameras, listening devices, and a few concealed weapons. We knew that we might encounter resistance, and we wanted to be prepared to defend ourselves. We drove to the warehouse, arriving under the cover of darkness. The warehouse was a sprawling, dilapidated structure, surrounded by a chain-link fence and patrolled by a group of armed guards. We parked our cars a safe distance away and approached the warehouse on foot, moving stealthily through the shadows. We used a set of bolt cutters to cut through the fence, creating a small opening that we could squeeze through. We slipped inside the warehouse, our hearts pounding in our chests. The interior of the warehouse was dark and cavernous, filled with stacks of crates, piles of debris, and the lingering smell of decay. We moved cautiously through the warehouse, using our flashlights to guide our way. We soon came across a group of men, huddled around a table counting stacks of cash. It was Melissa and her accomplices preparing for the money laundering transaction. We watched them from the shadows, gathering evidence of their crimes and formulating a plan to apprehend them. But as we were preparing to move in, we heard a noise behind us. We turned around to see a group of armed guards approaching us with menacing expressions on their faces. We had been discovered. The guards opened fire, unleashing a hail of bullets that ripped through the warehouse. We ducked for cover, returning fire with our concealed weapons. A fierce gun battle erupted, filling the warehouse with the deafening roar of gunfire and the acrid smell of gunpowder. We were outnumbered and outgunned, but we were determined to fight our way out. We used our training and our instincts to evade the guards, moving from cover to cover and returning fire with deadly accuracy. But as the battle raged on, I realized that we were losing. The guards were closing in and we were running out of ammunition. I knew that we had to make a stand, to protect ourselves and to stop Melissa from escaping with the money. I gathered my remaining comrades and we charged towards the center of the warehouse, where Melissa and her accomplices were huddled together, trying to flee. We burst into the room, guns blazing, and confronted Melissa face to face. She stared at me, her eyes filled with hatred and fear. "You'll never get away with this, Elijah," she snarled. "I'm going to make you pay for everything you've done." "It's over, Melissa," I said. "You're finished." With that, I raised my gun and fired. The bullet struck Melissa in the chest, sending her crashing to the ground. Her accomplices surrendered and the gun battle came to an end. We had won. But as I stood there, surrounded by the chaos and carnage, I couldn't help but wonder if it was all worth it. Had I gone too far? Had I become the very thing I had been fighting against? I suddenly questioned the choices I had made. The silence that followed the gunfire was deafening. The acrid smell of gunpowder hung heavy in the air, mingling with the metallic tang of blood. I stared down at Melissa, her eyes wide and unseeing, a crimson stain spreading across her chest. A wave of nausea washed over me, followed by a chilling sense of emptiness. Had I really just killed someone? Had I crossed a line from which there was no return? The faces of my friends swam into focus, their expressions a mixture of relief, shock, and concern. Maria rushed to my side, her hand gently touching my arm. "Elijah, are you okay?" she asked, her voice filled with worry. I shook my head, unable to speak. The weight of what I had done pressed down on me, suffocating me. I had come to the warehouse seeking justice, seeking to stop Melissa from causing any more harm, but in the end I had become a killer. Was this victory? Was this the revenge I had sought? Or had I simply traded one darkness for another? The arrival of the FBI sirens shattered the silence, jolting me back to reality. Agents swarmed the warehouse, securing the scene, arresting Melissa's accomplices and tending to the wounded. I was taken into custody, questioned, and processed. The FBI agents were professional and thorough, but I could sense their unease. They knew that I had acted to stop a dangerous criminal, but they also knew that I had taken the law into my own hands. As I sat in the interrogation room, waiting to learn my fate, I replayed the events of the night in my mind. Had I had a choice? Could I have stopped Melissa without resorting to violence? Or was her death an inevitable consequence of her actions? I didn't know the answer, and perhaps I never would. But I knew that I would have to live with the consequences of my actions for the rest of my life. After hours of questioning, the FBI agents finally released me. They informed me that I would not be charged with murder, as they believed that I had acted in self-defense. However, I would be charged with several lesser offenses, including illegal possession of a firearm and unauthorized entry into a federal crime scene. I accepted the charges, knowing that I deserved to be punished for my actions. I returned home to Sarah and my children, feeling like a stranger in my own house. They were relieved to see me, but I could sense the fear and confusion in their eyes. They didn't understand what had happened, why I had put myself in such danger, why I had killed someone. I tried to explain, to share my story, but the words seemed hollow and inadequate. I had crossed a line, and I couldn't go back. The trial was a media circus. The story of the marketing manager who had taken down a criminal mastermind captured the attention of the nation. Some hailed me as a hero, a vigilante who had done what the authorities couldn't. Others condemned me as a murderer, a dangerous man who had no respect for the law. The trial dragged on for weeks, with witnesses testifying, evidence being presented, and lawyers arguing over the details of the case. I sat in the courtroom, listening to the proceedings, feeling like a puppet on a string. I knew that my fate was in the hands of the jury and that their decision would determine the course of my life. Finally, the day arrived when the jury delivered its verdict. I stood before the court, my heart pounding in my chest as the foreman read the verdict. We, the jury, find the defendant, Elijah Reed, guilty of illegal possession of a firearm and unauthorized entry into a federal crime scene, the foreman announced. We find the defendant not guilty of murder. A wave of relief washed over me. I had been spared the worst possible outcome. I would not spend the rest of my life in prison, but I was still guilty of a crime and I would have to pay the price. The judge sentenced me to 5 years of probation, a hefty fine and community service. I accepted the sentence, knowing that it was just. I had broken the law and I had to face the consequences. As I walked out of the courthouse, a free man but a convicted criminal, I felt a sense of profound sadness and regret. I had achieved my revenge, I had stopped Melissa Hayes, but I had lost so much in the process. My reputation was tarnished, my career was in shambles, and my family was traumatized. Was it worth it? Had I truly avenged myself, or had I simply destroyed myself? I didn't know the answer, but I knew that I had a long road ahead of me, a road of healing, rebuilding, and redemption. It was time to pick up the pieces, to move forward, and to try to make amends for the mistakes I had made. But the ghost of Melissa Hayes, the memory of that night in the warehouse, would forever haunt me, a constant reminder of the darkness that lurks within us all. Even after all this time, I can't shake the feeling of unease. The terms of my probation were strict, limiting my travel, restricting my activities, and requiring me to check in regularly with a parole officer. I was a prisoner in my own life, constantly reminded of my past mistakes and the consequences of my actions. I lost my business, my reputation in tatters, and found it difficult to find work. Employers were hesitant to hire a convicted criminal, even one who had acted in self-defense. I spent months unemployed, struggling to make ends meet and feeling like a failure as a husband and father. Sarah stood by me, unwavering in her support, but I could see the strain in her eyes, the worry etched on her face. She worked tirelessly to keep our family afloat, taking on extra shifts at her job and sacrificing her own needs to provide for our children. I felt guilty and ashamed, knowing that I had caused her so much pain and hardship. I wanted to make things right, to rebuild our lives, but I didn't know where to start. One day, while performing my community service at a local soup kitchen, I met a man named John. John was a former convict, a recovering addict, and a dedicated volunteer. He had turned his life around after spending years in prison, dedicating himself to helping others who had fallen on hard times. John saw something in me, a spark of potential, a desire to make amends. He took me under his wing, offering me guidance, support, and a sense of purpose. He encouraged me to use my skills and experiences to help others, to share my story with those who were struggling with addiction, crime, and the challenges of re-entering society. I started volunteering at the soup kitchen on a regular basis, serving meals, cleaning tables, and offering words of encouragement to the homeless and the needy. I also began attending support groups for former convicts, sharing my story and listening to the stories of others. I found solace and healing in helping others, in knowing that I could make a difference in their lives. I discovered a new sense of purpose, a new reason to live. As I immersed myself in community service, I began to see the world in a new light. I realized that there was more to life than money, success, and revenge. What truly mattered was making a positive impact on the lives of others, contributing to the greater good, and finding meaning and fulfillment in service. I decided to dedicate my life to helping those who had been marginalized, forgotten, and cast aside by society. I started a nonprofit organization dedicated to providing job training, housing assistance, and counseling services to former convicts. I used my marketing skills to raise awareness and generate support for the organization, attracting volunteers, donors, and community partners. The organization grew rapidly, becoming a beacon of hope for those who had lost their way. We helped countless individuals to turn their lives around, to find jobs, to rebuild their families, and to become productive members of society. As I witnessed the transformation in the lives of those we served, I felt a sense of profound gratitude and fulfillment. I had found my calling, my purpose, my destiny. I was no longer defined by my past mistakes, but by my present actions and my future aspirations. Years passed, and I continued to lead the nonprofit organization, expanding its services and reaching out to more and more individuals in need. I became a respected figure in the community, known for my compassion, my dedication, and my unwavering commitment to justice. I was invited to speak at conferences, to testify before legislative committees, and to receive awards for my community service. I had transformed myself from a convicted criminal into a champion of the underdog, a voice for the voiceless, and a force for good in the world. One day, I received an invitation to attend a fundraising gala for a local charity. The gala was being held at a prestigious hotel in downtown Chicago, and it was expected to attract a large crowd of wealthy donors, business leaders, and community activists. I hesitated to accept the invitation. I was still uncomfortable in formal settings, and I didn't want to be reminded of my past life as a corporate executive. But I knew that the gala was an important opportunity to raise money for my nonprofit organization, so I decided to attend. I arrived at the hotel with Sarah, feeling nervous and out of place. The ballroom was filled with elegantly dressed people, sipping champagne and exchanging pleasantries. I mingled with the crowd, trying to make conversation and promote my organization. As the evening progressed, the master of ceremonies took to the stage to introduce a special guest speaker. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced, "we are honored to have with us tonight a true inspiration, a woman who has overcome incredible adversity and dedicated her life to serving others. Please welcome Melissa Hayes." My heart skipped a beat. Melissa Hayes, what was she doing here? As Melissa walked onto the stage, I stared at her in disbelief. She looked different, older, but there was no mistaking her. She was wearing a simple but elegant dress, her hair was neatly styled, and her face was devoid of makeup. She looked humble, contrite, and almost unrecognizable. She began to speak, her voice soft but clear. She shared her story of redemption, describing her crimes, her imprisonment, and her transformation. She talked about the importance of forgiveness, compassion, and second chances. She spoke with sincerity and passion, captivating the audience with her honesty and vulnerability. She concluded her speech by announcing that she was donating a significant sum of money to my nonprofit organization. She said that she wanted to help me in my mission to help others, to give back to the community, and to make amends for her past mistakes. As she spoke, I felt a strange mix of emotions: anger, resentment, and disbelief, but also something else. A glimmer of hope, a flicker of understanding, and perhaps even a hint of forgiveness. As Melissa stepped down from the stage, she walked towards me, her eyes filled with tears. "Elijah," she said, her voice trembling, "I want to apologize for everything I did to you. I know that I can never undo the harm I caused, but I hope that you can find it in your heart to forgive me." I looked at her, studying her face, searching for any sign of deception or insincerity. But all I saw was remorse, regret, and a genuine desire to make amends. I thought about my own journey of redemption, the struggles I had faced, and the lessons I had learned. I realized that forgiveness was not just about letting go of the past. It was about embracing the future, about creating a better world for ourselves and for others. I extended my hand to Melissa. "I forgive you, Melissa," I said. "I hope that we can work together to make a difference in the lives of those who need it most." Melissa grasped my hand, her tears flowing freely. "Thank you, Elijah," she said. "That means more than you know." As we stood there holding hands, I felt a sense of closure, a sense of peace, and a sense of hope. The past was behind us, and the future was ours to create. We had both made mistakes, we had both caused harm, but we had both found a way to rise above our circumstances and to make a positive impact on the world. And that, I realized, was the ultimate revenge. Not revenge on each other, but revenge on the darkness that had once consumed us. Revenge on the hate, the anger, and the bitterness that had threatened to destroy our lives. We had chosen to embrace the light, to find meaning and purpose in service, and to dedicate our lives to helping others. And that was a victory that no one could ever take away from us.